Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Our team has had a very good offseason. I've been very pleased with the progress that we made. We obviously lost some really, really good players from last year's championship team.
I absolutely know that we'll get a great director of athletics in there. And the things that we've done in the last 8 months are going to set us up for the next 20 years.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, coming to you. Hoover, Alabama, SEC Media Days, Day 3 in the books now. 11 coaches and teams have come through. Only 3 more to go, including the Gamecocks tomorrow. Finally, Will Muschamp and company will make their appearance today. We had Alabama, we had Arkansas, we had Kentucky, and we had Missouri, and we had a little bit of lightning in the room with Nick Saban, especially when he left the big room and went over to ESPN and was interviewed on one of their shows and talking about 2 of his players, Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones, and his apparent decision not to suspend them for any games after their arrests earlier this year in Louisiana, an arrest that did not lead to any further legal issues because the big man down there, the attorney general, whatever, the judge threw the case out or dropped the charges, whatever the case may be. So that certainly raised some discussion, especially in the interview on ESPN. We'll talk about that coming up. You'll hear a little bit from Saban. You'll hear a little bit from Mark Stoops. Kentucky plays USC this year, and also from Barry Odom of Missouri, the new coach there. They play the Gamecocks this year as well. And Missouri today learned they're losing AD to Baylor, so Barry Odom had that to deal with. That was at the forefront of a lot of the questions towards him today. Also coming up tonight on the program, we're going to look ahead to the Coaches for Charity event coming up in a couple of weeks in Greenville. And Coach Fisher DeBerry will join us later on to talk about his annual event for raising money involving college coaches around the state. K-Mac and the professor, Tom Hayes, back in the studios in downtown Columbia. And tonight, guys, is, of course, the most important week here at SEC Media Days, the most anticipated night. It's the night that I reveal my SEC preseason ballot for the all-SEC team and the SEC East, West, and champion.
Got Mississippi State picked again.
Yeah, you have South Carolina winning the whole thing.
You're just going to have to wait like everybody else.
By the way, when I was listening to your comments, I heard the news earlier, and just on the top of my head, it's got to be scary that a guy leaves Missouri, where they had a tough year on campus and in the athletic department, and he goes to Baylor. I mean, he must love pain.
Yeah, or a lot of money. Maybe Baylor's throwing a ton of money at him to say, hey, come fix our problems here. Okay, we'll dive into things here on Sports Talk Wednesday from Hoover and Columbia in a moment.
making final preparations for our season.
Before we get into all the football talk, the discussion, the comments, the praise, the criticism, the questions, everything else, unfortunately, the very, very sad news this morning of the passing of former star Clemson DeMontez Stitt at the age of 27, died unexpectedly at his home in North Carolina. And he was a terrific player for the Tigers, played on 4 NCAA tournament teams, 3 with Oliver Purnell, 1 with Brad Brownell. Just a really, really good player and a really nice person from my times dealing with him in interview sessions. And K-Mac, I know you had a chance to talk to him too after ball games. Just a nice guy, but the guy that became the quarterback of that basketball team, he directed that offense, and he was a perfect fit for what Oliver Purnell was trying to do offensively for the Tigers.
And he got better every year. From his freshman year to his senior year, like you're supposed to. That's a guy that shows that a player is coachable and is bought in and is working hard. And he was so tough on the court. He didn't back down from anybody, and he was a part of a lot of big wins for Clemson. They blew out North Carolina, blew the doors off North Carolina and Duke at Little John Coliseum. They made a run to the ACC tournament championship game, a run to the semifinals in the ACC tournament when he made the all-tournament team. He was just a really great player on the court and as you mentioned, Corn, a good guy off the court. And it was just stunning early this morning when I saw that. I hoped it wasn't true. You see something on Twitter and you go, hopefully that's not true. Hopefully it's just some inside joke. And then you go and you see the various teams, from Tel Aviv and the different places where he's played overseas, putting out their condolences and details coming in. And we still don't know the exact cause of death. There was a report that maybe it was a heart attack, but we don't know for sure. But 27 is far too young. And boy, looking through his Twitter feed too, it's just heartbreaking to see he was tweeting yesterday and now he's gone. And that's a huge loss. But, we lose DeMontez Stitt and Rolando Howe within a month of each other, just a couple of weeks apart, and 2 guys that were so big to their respective programs and in this basketball community. Very, very tough couple of weeks here in the basketball community in South Carolina.
And, of course, from a basketball standpoint, Corn, unfortunately, like a lot of Clemson guards, never gotten the credit inside the ACC of how tremendous he was as a guard. It seems that some of the great guards that's gone through Clemson gets overlooked when the conference talks about the history of guards in the ACC. And one of those interesting characters, guys who really set the tone from each guard position, off guard or point guard, defensively. Once he was dialed in defensively, you knew there was going to be a tough night for the opposition's offense for that played Clemson.
Yeah, he came as more of a defensive player. His offense came later in his career. He got more comfortable and more confident in his offense, and K-Mac's right. He got better every year, and the basketball team did as well. So very sad news coming out of Clemson. As far as things here today, we heard from Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Missouri. To summarize, Nick Saban was first in this morning. A big crowd of Alabama fans downstairs, of course, to greet the Crimson Tide. And, he did his thing in the big room with the main media. There was nobody asked the question about, which was surprising. I don't know if people just assumed that nothing was going to happen with the 2 players. There was no reason to ask. And then when he got on the set with the guys at ESPN, the subject was brought up about what are you going to do with Cam Robinson and the other player. And he said, based on what we know and based on everything that has happened and doing our own investigating and all that, he eventually would say he doesn't plan to suspend them for any games if they were being punished internally, as the case may be. And Feinbaum chimed in that he was leaving himself open to a lot of criticism and stuff like that. And Saban basically said, I don't give a damn, and cut off the interview right there.
Yeah.
And Saban can do that. I mean, you get all the rings and the power that he has. And you know what? I think that we in the media and the public, of course, we have a right to our opinions and what we think should be done in any particular case. But at the end of the day, I think it has to be left up to the coaches. You have to trust that the coaches are making the right decision for the right reasons. If they aren't, eventually that will catch up with them.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, not knowing the case very well at all, except from afar, but considering charges were dropped, I don't think that Saban has any other reason to suspend the players for any game time and just handle it with however he's deciding to handle it.
I don't disagree with that, Corn, but I don't understand why coaches have to get incredulous when they're asked the question, because it's a fair question to say, hey, look, this looks bad. There was a gun in the car. They searched the car. They find the stuff. I mean, at least be able to explain it, because what they do is they say nothing's going to happen, and you ask them about it, and they go, I don't care what anybody says. That's what I'm doing. Dan Mullen was tone deaf yesterday when he knew the questions were coming about Simmons, and he still answered them like a tone deaf dope. And then somebody said, well, that was your daughter. Well, my daughter would never put herself in that situation. So I don't know what he was trying to say about the girl that was getting hit there. Like, it's her fault. Apparently she put herself in that situation. I just think if you're going to do something like that, fine. You're right. It's a coach's program. The buck stops with him in college football, but you better be able to at least coherently explain the rationale behind that so people can understand. And not everybody's going to, and I get that, but don't act incredulous when Feinbaum or any other reporter asks you, okay, so what's up with that? I mean, because it looks kind of bad, and you can see how people think that they're getting preferential treatment because they're star athletes and you have a game, and then explain it. Well, that's not why that is. And I thought he kind of got into it a little bit, Corn, where he was explaining, look, it's not against the law to have a gun in Louisiana. They didn't have probable cause to search the car, yada, yada, yada. The charges were dropped. Okay, so I can get on board with that, but acting incredulous for somebody asking what I think is a very legit question and acting like it's just the media out on some, witch hunt, that's not the case.
Well, that's one of the key points why Nick Saban is not in the NFL anymore, because the NFL media does not give you any surcease. They're going to jump on you. And I've seen his act in Miami when he was with the Dolphins. He didn't like that very well. The interesting thing, Corn, is for a guy like Nick Saban, he has a weapon for punishment that, let's face it, a lot of other teams do not have. Because of the depth and the recruiting at Alabama, he can just sit these guys for the season and say, well, there's the bench, because he's got somebody to plug in there. Other coaches, they may desperately need talent, and then when they make a move, they're going to be questioned even further because they know that these guys are desperate to win.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So it just that has kind of been every year. There's the theme that runs through media days. That's seen this year. Excuse me. And that is, how are you going to? What's the proper way to deal with indiscretions by your players, and coaches are being judged by the media and by the public on how they answer those questions. But Saban, he cut them off right at the knees there and said, end of conversation, basically, and they moved on to something else. A couple of other things to mention from Clemson, and of course ACC Media Days is next week. Deshaun Watson is on more watch lists. I don't know how many more you can put him on, but he is on the watch list for the Werfel Trophy, the Davey O'Brien Award, and the All-State AFCA Good Works Team. The Biletnikoff watch list came out. Deshaun Watson is not on that, though I'm sure if they put him at receiver and threw him some passes, he'd end up on that. But Mike Williams and Artavis Scott from Clemson are on the Biletnikoff watch list. It's amazing. It tells you the talent that Clemson has, because the Tigers populate almost every watch list that has come out has got at least one or multiple Clemson players on it, and justifiably so. because of the fact that they do have some talented players. Basketball note, Georgia Tech has added a pair of graduate transfers to its team for this year. 6'8", Kellen McCormick is coming from Western Michigan. 6'7", Jodon Price is coming in from Eastern Michigan. Josh Pastner announcing that today. When we come back from the break, okay, I'm going to give you my preseason SEC ballots. Be sure to take notes. I will say as a disclaimer that you use this information at your own risk. If you call your bookie up soon after the show to make your initial wagers on the season, again, you do that at your own risk. We'll dive into that coming up after the break. One other strange item from today in the questioning of the Missouri coach and players, the ESPYs awards are tonight, something that I have talk about your boycotts. That's one of my boycotts. I ignore that show annually. Anyway, apparently they are awarding the Missouri football team some kind of humanitarian award for the hunger strike they went on or something with the mess at Missouri. The fake mess at Missouri last year, apparently. And anyway, nobody from the school is going to the awards. Nobody from administration, nobody from the football team. So and that could be kind of odd when they announce that tonight and nobody from Missouri is there to accept it. Okay, here is the Corns ballot for the SEC preseason media. To start with the West here. It was difficult. I had to weigh a bunch of different factors here. But I'm going with LSU to win the West. Quarterback's pretty good. Great running back. Other talent returning on offense. Good-looking defense. Going with LSU. Going with Ole Miss, too. Best quarterback in the league. Got to develop its running game again. Got to find some receivers.
Did Alabama leave the SEC?
Nope.
No, is Alabama out of the SEC? Because you've done the first two teams in the SEC West. I haven't heard Alabama yet.
You cannot keep creating miracles.
It ain't a miracle at Alabama. It's a bunch of five-star players.
They don't have an established running back right now. Don't have an established quarterback.
Plug a guy in.
They're third. Arkansas fourth. Auburn is fifth. A&M is 6th. They got Mississippi State 7th.
Boy, Mississippi State from first to worst
It happens.
in a year, man.
It happens.
Dak Prescott's gone.
It happens. LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Texas A&M, Mississippi
Well,
State.
now I'm scared. The reason I'm scared is because Corn and I agree in the West. I just feel that LSU is laying in the weeds.
I think
this
LSU's
year.
got the chest this year. They got the chest. Now, to the East, I'm going with Tennessee, followed by, this was tough, coming up with number 2. I'm going with Georgia because, you know, if Nick Chubb is back as Nick Chubb, then that makes Georgia really dangerous. They get Sony Michel back maybe after a month of the season, maybe sooner. But going with Georgia 2, Florida 3. I'm going to go with Kentucky 4 because of the quarterback. Barker's a good quarterback. He can cause you. USC's got to play up there. I think Kentucky will beat South Carolina. So I'm going Kentucky 4, going South Carolina 5. I'm going to give Vandy 6 and Missouri 7. And my overall league champion, Tennessee versus LSU in Atlanta, championship game, it's the Vols. 19 starters returning, good quarterback proven, great running back proven, excellent receivers, terrific defense throughout from the front line to the linebackers to the secondary. I don't see how you can't pick Tennessee to win it. And they've got all their tough league games in Knoxville this year. So I think that works in their favor too. We'll talk about the players on my all-SEC ballot coming up in a moment. All right, so just a quick reaction from the panel back in Columbia to my preseason predictions for the West, the East, and the overall champion. K-Mac?
My what?
Your reaction to my predictions.
Oh, my reaction to your predictions coming from you. You want me to react to you. I like the East. I like your picks in the East. I think Tennessee's the way to go there. I have no problem with that. Out West, I don't have a major problem with LSU. I mean, I could see that happening when you have a Fournette that you can hand the ball to 20, 30 times a game and a defense that should be stout. Les Miles doesn't have any pressure now that everybody's finally got off his back there in Baton Rouge until he loses again. I can get behind that. I think Alabama will be in the top 2. I don't trust Ole Miss at all. I don't trust Hugh Freeze as far as I can throw him. I don't trust Chad Kelly as far as I can throw him.
Wow.
I think that could be an implosion. They have a lot of distractions. I think the bubble is about to burst. So I will still stick with the heavyweights up there in the West of Alabama and LSU.
Well, LSU is a tremendous team. I will say this, though. I think if there's a dark horse, not say to win the West Division, but who ultimately may decide who wins it, is I think Arkansas is going to pull an upset on somebody, and a big one, and that's going to wipe them out of winning the West. In the East, Corn, I'm afraid of Tennessee only because of this. Their schedule is top-heavy at the beginning, which tells me 2 things. Either we're going to learn early that they're pretenders to the throne, and then they sort of gas it and lose maybe 1 or 2 games they shouldn't, or are they the team that runs through the top of that schedule, a la what Mississippi State did a couple of years ago when they were ranked number 1 at one point, and then take their foot off the accelerator once they pass that Alabama game, and then stumble in a game they should not give away. So I'm afraid of Tennessee's schedule is too lopsided one way or the other, where they can have a pratfall early, or they take their foot off the accelerator late and lose the division to, I'd say, the team that's always sitting there, and that's Florida, who I think will improve offensively this year.
Okay. One thing about Arkansas, and something to keep an eye on too, their schedule is very favorable in that they get Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida, and LA home. They play Texas A&M in Arlington, and they do go to Mississippi State. They do go to Missouri, but they do most of their heavy lifting at home. So they do have a second game on the road against TCU, which will be, of course, a big challenge for them in terms of the overall record. Now, as far as the preseason all-SEC team, I'll run through it quickly. Here's what I've got. Offense, 2 quarterbacks. I went with Chad Kelly and Joshua Dobbs. 4 running backs, Fournette, Hurd, Ralph Webb, and Nick Chubb, on the assumption Chubb will be healthy. My 4 receivers are Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Fred Ross, and Drew Morgan. 2 tight ends, O.J. Howard and Evan Ingram. Offensive guards and tackles, Cam Robinson, David Sharp, Dan Skipper, Greg Pike, Braden Smith. I put Mason Zandy and Zach Bailey in there, and Isaiah Wynn. I think people believe that Bailey has all SEC talent, and Zandy is a third-year starter, or basically a second-year starter, third-year starter. I think he'll get some recognition. The centers, Brandon Kublano and Ethan Pochik from LSU. On the defensive line, I've got Jonathan Allen, Carl Lawson, and Derek Barnett, Myles Garrett, Trent Thompson, Charles Harris, Marquise Haynes, and C.C. Jefferson, 8 of them. My linebackers are Reuben Foster, Kendall Beckwith, Jalen Reeves-Maben, Brooks Ellis, Zach Cunningham, and Arden Key. And my DBs, Minka Fitzpatrick, Eddie Jackson, Carlton Davis, Jalen Tabor, Cameron Sutton, Dominique Sanders, Tre'Davious White, and Jamal Adams. The kickers, I went with Elliott Fry. You could go with, I went with him first. I went with Daniel Carlson from Auburn as my second. And the punters, Trevor Daniel and Sean Kelly. Return specialists, Evan Berry and Christian Kirk, and all-purpose Christian Kirk and Isaiah McKenzie. So that's my ballot for the SEC preseason.
Christian's nickname's Captain.
Yes, it could be. Hey, he's a good player, man. He's a good player. Had a great
I'll
year
be here
last
all
year
week
at Texas A&M. All right, so there you go. That is a look at that. So let's slide right into Nick Saban, who came in first today to talk to the media in the big room, coming off his national championship of last year, but with some significant losses from last year's team, as we touched on. Got to find a quarterback. There's 4 of them still competing. Got to establish a running back, some openings on the offensive line as well. Of course, they do have talent throughout their program, but in some cases it's going to be very young. Here's Saban as he spoke to the media earlier today here in Hoover.
Our team has had a very good offseason. I've been very pleased with the progress that we made. We obviously lost some really, really good players from last year's championship team. Good leadership, good people, great team chemistry, all things that are intangibles that are difficult to build and are challenges to recognize as they develop, because those things just don't happen overnight. You know, it's a work in progress, and it's certainly been the case with our team this year. But a year ago, I didn't know that we were going to have that kind of team chemistry. When I stood up here and talked to you, I didn't know we were going to have that kind of commitment. I didn't know we were going to respond to adversity the way we did. And even though we're trying to work on creating those things with the personality of this team, we don't know that for sure either. But I've been pleased with the progress that we made in the offseason, the spring practice that we had, the summer conditioning program. We obviously have some challenges. You know, for the 3rd year in a row, I'm standing up here talking about somebody's going to be a new quarterback for us, and somebody's got to win that job. Somebody's got to win the team. You know, that hasn't necessarily happened yet. And you know, I'm not going to sit up here and sort of try to, you know, I don't know the right word, but give you some statistics on who's winning the race and how the race is going and who's ahead, and are they on the back stretch or in the final turn? You know, that's something that's going to happen probably in fall camp. I hope in fall camp. You know, we have 3 starters back on the offensive line, which is, you know, a good start, building a good air, and we have some good young players who can develop at that position. You know who our receivers are, and we've got a pretty talented group. This is the first time for many, many years that we haven't had an experienced, talented running back who has proven his value, whether it was way back when Glenn Coffey played, it was Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram came back and played with Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson played with Eddie Lacy. Eddie Lacy played with T.J. Yeldon. T.J. Yeldon played with Derrick Henry. But we always had one of those guys coming back. Well, this year we lost both guys, in Derrick Henry and Kenyon Drake. So this will provide opportunity, even though they're less experienced, for some other players who are talented players to have a chance to succeed at that position. You know, defensively, we have 6 starters back, but we lost some really, really good players, and we lost a lot of depth on our team on defense, which will be a real challenge for us to replace, especially up front. The diversity in players that we had on last year's team was almost perfect for what you need in this day and age of football. With the spread, with no huddle, you need a lot of depth. You need a lot of athletic guys who can make plays in space, who can rush the passer. And then when you play some of the power teams in our conference, you need some bigger, more physical guys to be able to stand in there. Well, we kind of had all those parts. I'm not sure we have all those parts this year, but certainly we're working to try to develop them.
It's got to catch up with them sooner or later. I mean, they've gotten by, as he said, with new quarterbacks. This will be the 4th year in a row that a new quarterback is starting for Saban, and he's been able to get by. He's always had the great running back to carry the load while the quarterback sort of got into the flow of things. You know, Bo Scarborough stands to be that running back, and he's a talent, but, you know, he's unproven. Not so sure they can count on that again this year. That's why I picked him 3rd. Back in a moment.
A year ago, I talked about all the building that was going on our campus. Greg just touched on it. We were proud to just finish playing our first season in the beautifully renovated Commonwealth Stadium. We thoroughly enjoyed that. Our fans did. It was a great experience. We are just days away from moving into the football training.
Yeah, one more thing on Alabama. Yeah, if you're going to get them, this is the year to get them, because besides the fact that they've got to find a new quarterback and a new stud running back, their schedule is brutal. They play Southern Cal to open the season in Arlington, Texas. Then first SEC game is at Ole Miss. They have to go to Arkansas. They have to go to Tennessee. They have to go to LSU. So if they run the gauntlet there and, win the West against that schedule with this team, then I think that, it's all over then. They're just going to win every year the rest of our lives, because that would just be an incredible achievement to do that, if they can do that. Kentucky in today. Mark Stoops. I didn't realize this is his fourth year, and they've had a lot of smoke in Lexington, but not the success they had hoped for. He's yet to have a winning season with the Wildcats, and that smoke's starting to turn into a little fire under his seat. This could be the breakthrough year. Drew Barker is the quarterback. He is a guy that was heavily recruited. South Carolina recruited him when he was coming out of high school. Good player. Boom Williams is back at running back. JoJo Kemp is back.
Ooh,
South Carolina gets one more
shotgun.
shot. They get one more shot at stopping JoJo Kemp when they go up there. But got to rebuild their defense a little bit. They got a lot back on offense, not so much back on defense. They've done a lot of work around that program to enhance it, to help in recruiting and so forth. And here is Stoops talking about all of that to us earlier today.
A year ago, I talked about all the building that was going on our campus. Greg just touched on it. We were proud to just finish playing our first season in the beautifully renovated Commonwealth Stadium. We thoroughly enjoyed that. Our fans did. It was a great experience. We are just days away from moving into the football training center. That'll be a game changer for us. It'll help us continue to develop the players that we have. Our players work extremely hard. They're great kids. We're building this program, and they deserve the very best to continue in their efforts and their development. It'll also help us on the recruiting front. We need to continue to recruit at a high level and attract great players from throughout the country. The biggest change I'm excited about is the culture change within our program. I think it's very easy to change a climate within a program and very difficult to change the culture. And I'm very proud of the administration, our coaching staff, our players to continue to push for that winning culture. An area that we've touched on and worked extremely hard this past season and past year is the capacity. And quite simply, our players need to do more, whether it's in the classroom, they have that attention to detail in the meetings, in the football meetings, to pay attention longer, to have the attention to detail longer within our meetings, longer training sessions, harder workouts, harder weight room workouts, train harder this summer. We had longer spring practices We need to have a tougher two-a-days, a tougher camp, and continue to expand our capacity to handle more, to endure what it takes mentally and physically to compete and to win in this league. In particular, to close the gap on the close games. We've been very close. We're tired of being close. And our players are doing what it takes and expanding that capacity, expanding everything that we're doing to give us a larger margin to not have to play a perfect game all the time. Our staff. Someone once said, the only constant in life is change. We've dealt with some change in the coaching staff. I feel very, very confident in who we have and what we have in place right now with our staff. If you look at the offensive side of the ball, I brought in Eddie Grand to be the offensive coordinator. I had the pleasure of working with Eddie. I've been with Eddie. We were both on the ground floor with Jimbo Fisher in the first days to help build that program at Florida State. And I know up front and personal what type of man he is, what type of leader he is, the attention to detail that he does things with. And I couldn't be more happy to have Eddie with me. He comes from Cincinnati, where he had very prolific offenses and did a heck of a job.
Okay, Mark Stoops from Kentucky. They open up at home against Southern Miss September 3rd. Their SEC opener is at Florida on September 10th. So we'll have some idea just what Kentucky has in the cannon when it goes down to Gainesville. But with a good quarterback, and they think they have it in Barker, with a good quarterback, I think that gives you a chance, and they have some other good playmakers on the offense. As I mentioned, a bunch of the offense returns, especially at wide receiver and at running back. They've got a lot of skill position people back, and their entire offensive line, their entire starting offensive line and tight end from last year are back. So their offense should be going full blazes this season, and that should be enough to help them to get that winning record. Okay, let's give you the recruiting knowledge here on a Wednesday night. USC recruiting defensive lineman Romello Martin. He's 6'3", 305 out of Brooklyn. Lance Thompson's been on him for over a year, dating back to when he was at Auburn. Now he's got the Gamecocks in position to make at him. They're in the top 10 with Tennessee, Kansas, Rutgers, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Louisville, Penn State, and Syracuse. He likes Lance Thompson. Thompson wants to get him down for a visit and tells him he can make a big impact on the defense. He's really interested in South Carolina, he said. Plans to visit in August. He's not made any visits to this point of the summer, has nothing else planned besides the USC visit. He said USC, Florida, Rutgers, and Penn State have been recruiting him the hardest thus far. He does not have a favorite at this point. He will not make his decision until January or signing day. 45 tackles and 7 sacks last year. Quarterback Trevor Lawrence in the 20 class of Cartersville, Georgia, who has narrowed his list to Clemson and Georgia from over 20 offers, regarded as the top quarterback in that class. He's been to both schools, and he plans to see each again before rendering a decision. About those two, he said, quote, I feel very comfortable at both schools. That's why they are my top two. My relationship with the coaches from both schools is great, and I think I can play in both offenses. Just finding which one might be a little better for me or help me the most will influence my decision, end quote. Last season, he threw for 3,042 yards and 26 touchdowns. The year before, he threw for 3,600 yards and about 35 touchdowns, I believe it was. So the guy has proven that he can flat out sling it. Clemson offensive line commitment Matt Bockhorst of Cincinnati suffered a torn ligament and torn cartilage in his knee during a drill at the opening last weekend. He reported a torn ACL as well as a sprained MCL. 2018 quarterback Dakereon Joyner of Fort Dorchester plans to visit USC and NC State this month. 2018 defensive ends of Xavier Thomas of Wilson was offered last night by Penn State. And Jadeveon Clowney's cousin, 2020 defensive end Damon Clowney. It's spelled like demon, but it's got to be pronounced Damon. 6'6", 185. He's visiting USC this weekend. He lives in D.C. He's a basketball player, training more as a football player now.
Clowney coming.
Yeah.
Clowney
so he's coming
coming
in this weekend for a visit, and but he's got a long way to go. The family he lives with has a son who's also a basketball prospect who's his same age, and they're both going to be making a basketball trip out to Vegas for a tournament out there. So long way to go. Not sure yet if he's at the level of a major football prospect, but he does carry the Clowney genes, which can't be all bad. That's it for recruiting. Top of the hour break. We'll be back.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornbluth here in Hoover, Alabama, site of SEC Media Days. Only one more day to go. And it should be pretty interesting because, well, for us, we've got Will Muschamp coming in. Will Muschamp's going to meet, as Steve Spurrier always did, with the South Carolina media before he comes downstairs. That'll be at 8:40. That's 8:40 our time here. Back in the East, that's 9:40. And then he'll go right downstairs and go right into the main room. So we'll have a double dose of Muschamp for you right off the get-go. And then the Gamecock players who will be here will be Debo Samuel, Marquavius Lewis, and Mason Zandy. Then we've got Ole Miss and LSU. And, of course, Ole Miss, the NCAA investigation. And then LSU, I'm sure that Les Miles is going to be asked about the atmosphere in Baton Rouge with everything going on there. And as the head football coach at the major university there, I've heard nothing from Les Miles since all of this social unrest broke out in Baton Rouge. I wonder if he will have a statement or anything to say about it tomorrow. We shall find out when he comes into the big room.
Well, the last time I saw him, as I said before, he was at the NBA playoff game. I think it was Cleveland and Golden State, and he was dressed like a bum. Remember I told you his shirt was out?
Yeah,
he had that beer bay window working. And I said, is this how you represent LSU? It did not have on any LSU colors, by the way, which is interesting. But, yeah, I think they're laying in the weeds. One thing I wish would happen tomorrow, which I know is not going to happen, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Mrs. Steve Spurrier, Will Muschamp still should walk out there with Spurrier shades on in a suit like Spurrier did last year.
Yeah, well, I think that'd be cute, but I think Muschamp wants to.
I don't think that's the look he would be going for. It's cute.
I think he kind of wants to establish his own presence and say, he wants to be Will Muschamp, and it's great to have Spurrier's legacy hanging over him and all that, but he wants to establish the Will Muschamp way.
That poor guy, everywhere he goes, he's coaching in Steve Spurrier's shadow.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And, this will be his time now, his time to put his message out there and kind of lay his plan out for the rest of the SEC people to hear about and see if he can back it up. I think the Vanderbilt game, I know it's the first game of the year. A lot of stuff can happen. They've got to beat Vanderbilt to have a good year. And because I think psychologically to lose to Vanderbilt, you're going to lose a lot of support. You're probably going to be 0-2 after you go to Mississippi State. If they can beat Vanderbilt and even lose to Mississippi State, you got a chance to regain some things by beating East Carolina at home in the third week. We'll be back with more in a moment. Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, continuing our coverage from SEC Media Days 2016. Next week, it'll be K-Mac's turn. He'll be in Charlotte for the ACC Media Days on Thursday and Friday. I'll actually be on vacation. I'll be tanning the body. I'll be swimming with the sharks and schooling with the dolphin down in Garden City. So look at a couple of weeks away. You'll be happy that I'm gone, and I'll be happy to be gone. And when I come back, full throttle in the football season, right at the beginning of practice, and we'll be getting after it. We'll have our Palmetto Pigskin Tour stops coming up in August, and the countdown to the opener, USC and Vandy. Before we get to the Barry Odom stuff, I want to go back to what I was saying about why I think South Carolina must beat Vanderbilt, because I think obviously the Gamecock fan psyche is very fragile right now, coming off of 3-9, and lose to Vanderbilt, you're going to lose that energy and excitement of a new staff and a new head coach. Even though you could go regain it that next week with a win in Starkville, I think it becomes even more difficult for you to go to Starkville and win. Now you're 0-2 coming home to play East Carolina, which you should beat at home. But if you can beat Vandy, then even if you lose to Mississippi State, you can come back home and beat East Carolina, and you're 2-1 with Texas A&M coming. I just think the whole beginning for them will be a lot brighter and a lot cherrier if they can beat Vanderbilt to open the season.
Well, no, there's no question about it. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. I think it's always dangerous when you talk about must-win in game one of the season, because they could lose that game. They could lose to Mississippi State. They could start out 0-4, and then with the young team that they have and the guys that they're trying to break in, especially at key positions like quarterback, I could see this team getting on a little roll towards the middle or end of the season where they're playing their best football. I mean, they could lose to Vanderbilt very, very easily, as we know. And they could beat Vanderbilt and still only win another 2 games all season long. It's going to be a Gamecocks this year, and I think you mentioned those Gamecock fans that are fragile. I think they just need to be realistic. And I know Will Muschamp has talked about our goals to win. You know, we can win the SEC this year, the East. He's competitive. I understand that. He thinks they're going to win every game. That's fine. But Gamecock fans need to know the talent level on that team right now is awful. I mean, there are people out there, and I've gotten into debates with them on social media that say the talent coaching staff and the development that hurt. No, the talent level has not only slipped, I mean, it has fallen into a deep pit,
I will
a
say,
bottomless pit that is going
this.
to take years to rebuild.
I will say this. There were times in those 11-win seasons that South Carolina did not look good, and they barely won football game. The Central Florida game when they almost blew the lead late, and then they had to scramble and get a fumble late to beat Tennessee. Last year, they lost 5 games by 7 points or less. Is the talent level down? Yes. But then again, maybe a new coaching staff gets the most out of that talent. And if somebody slips, for instance, Kentucky thought they had arrived. We won a few games. We got one in Columbia. We're ready to go to a bowl game. Then they hit the middle of the season and boom, hit a wall. And they see, when you got a young team like South Carolina has, Phil, losing game 1 may be the end all, or maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Guys still listen to you. You got 5 straight home games coming up in the middle of the season when you can make some hay. When you got film to look at, clarify those mistakes you made, and then take off.
To me,
if to me, Muschamp has no pressure this year. He works.
I disagree. I mean, I think there's pressure. If they struggle, and because Gamecock fans still, he thinks he's not at Florida where there's a different kind of pressure, but I think at South Carolina, they have Florida expectations with South Carolina talent. And Steve Spurrier gave them just enough of a taste where Gamecock fans say, you know what? We're supposed to win and win big. We're supposed to beat Clemson. Clemson's playing for national championships. We beat them 5 years in a row. This isn't supposed to happen. So they want it now.
No, here's the pressure. Here's the pressure right here. The pressure to me of any coach this year is Kirby Smart. Why? because Georgia always expects to win. Look at their talent level. And whether we are correct or not, the implications are you fired a coach that won 10 games to bring in a guy because you were afraid that the team closest to you geographically in the conference was going to get it.
But he has a ton more. I mean, he does have more pressure at Georgia and Florida, but he has more talent too. I mean, he's working with more. There's more pressure at Auburn. There's more talent.
There's why it's more pressure because
the
he has
only
more
way
talent.
South Carolina, but they got to beat these teams. That's the problem. And usually the Jimmies and Joes outmatch the X's and O's. If South Carolina is going to have a season where they win 6 or 7 games or more, it's going to be because the defense is way, way better than any of us expect. That Muschamp and his defensive staff are able to get way more out of those guys. There's just way too many questions on offense to expect them to be competitive week in and week out offensively.
Guess who answered those questions? Guess who answered those questions? And that's why the East coaches are in trouble, including Mark Richt, is because we've got all this talent. We've got the facilities. And then little old Missouri came in here and stole a couple of division titles. And I think that skewed everybody's look at coaching, especially in the SEC East, when Georgia's been sitting there for years, and then you let an upstart come in here and take 2 division titles from you and make you look bad in Sanford Stadium.
Yeah. Speaking of Missouri, the word came out today that their athletic director leaving for Baylor. So you look at Missouri now, they have an interim president. They have no athletic director. They have a brand new football coach. They have a brand new baseball coach. And their basketball coach may darn well be new soon if the current one doesn't start winning some games. That is an athletic program on the rocks right now. And Barry Odom seems like a really smart guy and a good guy. And, defense is his background, and he's done a great job defensively where he has been. He's got a talented quarterback. Now that Matty Mock, of course, boy, that is one of the most overlooked but puzzling stories of last football season. Nobody has done an extensive story. Matty Mock was one of the hot shot high school quarterbacks in the country out of Ohio. He goes to Missouri. He becomes a starting quarterback. They win games. He's not all that pretty at it, but he's effective. And then he just dissolved into nothing.
Yeah, Stephen Garcia himself.
Well, I guess. I mean, I don't know exactly what his problems were, but you think it was too much partying and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the video of him doing drugs came out, and that's what kind of did him in. I mean, he all sorts of problems. I mean, the guy had baggage coming in, and he really Stephen Garcia, for better or for worse, that's kind of what his legacy is in the SEC. When there's a quarterback, a hot shot quarterback that doesn't really understand the implications of being the face of a program, and that's what Matty Mock was, and he had to get out of there. And that video, they said it was made before he had come clean and gone to rehab and all the other things, but it was just the last straw at that point, and they had to cut ties with him. So it wasn't shocking. And really, the way he played, it might be better for Missouri just to move on. He never really lived up to that hype. Unlike Garcia, who, when he was on the field, I mean, he was a pretty darn good quarterback. Matty Mock never played at that level on the field. Now, he matched Stephen Garcia off the field. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Blow for blow, beer for beer, but on the field, Garcia certainly had the edge.
I think probably when people look at teams, Corn, there's that benchmark coach. And I think Missouri fans for the next few years will loathe the day they even questioned Gary Pinkel. The guy was a tremendous coach. He believed in rushing the passer and running the football. He got his, sea legs and knowledge from Don James, who took a Washington team and dominated the Pac-10 when Southern Cal was a kingpin. And he was just a dynamic coach and a good coach, doing the best with what he had.
Yeah, developing defensive ends, boy, he certainly could do that in his time. Got a good one on the team this year in Charles Henry. Be right back. I hear from today from SEC Media Days is one of the newbies in the league as far as head coaches go, Barry Odom. And Missouri taking over that program, which has seen some high times in its short time in the league, but struggled last year to a losing record. His job is to fix it. Here he is talking to us earlier today.
2015 at the University of Missouri, our football program, we did not meet our expectations. And it's something that we're working daily on, making sure that we don't revisit those. We're doing everything we can to make sure that our football team, singular focus on moving forward and being the best that we can be in 2016. I've addressed it every time I've had the opportunity to speak. There were things that happened on our campus that, as you look back and you go through it as an educator and as a coach and as a teacher, you learn a tremendous amount. And the ability that I've been awarded now and created with the opportunities that I have on building true trusting relationships with our team, it's something that so dear to me on making sure that I have an opportunity to be successful. University of Missouri changed my life in the late 90s when I was a student athlete there. It gave me an opportunity and a platform to change my life course history. And that's something that every day when I drive into work, I don't forget. I know that I've got an opportunity now to lead an athletic program, to lead a football team and a university and the state. I've got an opportunity to change lives of 120 kids a year. And that is what is really, really special to me, to have the opportunity to do that. I look at the guy that was at my desk before me, Gary Pinkel, and he gave me so many opportunities over the years. I was a high school coach, and he hired me as a graduate assistant. And then I worked for him for 12 years and then left, went to University of Memphis, and then he hired me back. And he left on being the winningest coach in the University of Missouri history. And before that, he was the winningest coach at Toledo. And then before that, he was a great offense coordinator at Washington. So he left a tremendous foundation for me to build on and to make sure that things were in place for me to take that program, the University of Missouri, and take it to new levels and new heights. And I'm excited every day. When I do go to work, there hasn't been a day or a week that's been by since I was a former student athlete there that a former player hasn't stopped by and checked in to see how things are going. And for me to have the ability to lead and represent those guys mean more than anything in the world, because there's a lot of guys there before me that have put in a lot of sweat equity on making Missouri what it is.
From today here at SEC Media Days in Hoover, Alabama, I mentioned Charles Henry. He's their defensive end. He's the latest in a long line of outstanding defensive ends that they have at Missouri, and he's a tough one to handle. The three guys they brought are good-looking players. They brought their tight end, who looks very good in person, and they brought one of their linebackers too. So they do have some players. They just don't appear to have a large number of them. But they do have a quarterback with some potential, as we've seen. So that's always a good place to start. We will be back in a moment. Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut here in Hoover, Alabama, SEC Media Days. Professor Tom Hayes, K-Mac, Kevin McCrary, back at our studios in Columbia. And we welcome in a new member of the Sports Talk family in Jared Rogers Martin, who joins us as a producer here on Sports Talk starting tonight. Good to have Jared in for the long run here with us with Sports Talk. Got to come up with a cool nickname for him. I am, of course, Jared, the creator of all nicknames here on Sports Talk.
Well,
for example,
I'm ready for it.
Going back decades, I came up with the name Professor for the Professor. K-Mac, I think I started calling you K-Mac first, didn't I? Did you already have that?
I already had that. I've been called K-Mac a long time.
Oh.
Well, I'll go with the obvious and call Jared the Jeweler.
The Jeweler. Yeah, that's
it could be worse. He could be the Jared from Subway.
Oh, no.
yeah, that works.
I don't think he wants to be that Jared.
We'll come up with something. Now Carson Mason's still with us. She'll be working with us, and she's got a great nickname, Carsonova, which I came up with. Yes, I like that. So, anyways, good to have Jared with us here at South Carolina Radio Network and part of the Sports Talk family. Moving forward, you'll hear from him, and you'll see a lot of things from him on our website because that is one of his strengths. Jared, tell us a little bit more for the folks listening, a little bit more briefly about your background in sports and your primary interest in the sports world.
Well, I am from Atlanta, Georgia, so I actually grew up a roundabout hockey fan with the Atlanta Thrashers. But, I came around to the more conventional ways. I used to stay up late listening to Atlanta Braves broadcast and got in trouble doing that a few times on my little handheld tape recorder. But, that late night love of the Braves is eventually what brought me around to just the general sports world. And then I went to the University of Georgia in college.
Oh, he's a Bulldog.
So, you may hear my keys rattling.
You're going to be equally hated by everybody in this state. Welcome to the club. You're going to fit right in.
I'm impartial. Clemson, South Carolina, you both get it.
Yes.
Georgia is
they both hate Georgia.
The one that I had. Well, we can all share our love and our hate together with that one.
And as far as your strengths when it comes to, for example, working on the web and working on sportstalksc.com and things that you'll bring to that area of our daily work, what are some of the ideas that you bring with you for that?
Well, one of the big things that I love to do is I'll be interacting with you on there. You want to post up comments, I'm going to be the one replying. K-Mac does a great job already on the Twitter and social media. And pretty much you just got another voice out there to either bully up on K-Mac or maybe the two of y'all can bully up on me with something. And I'll be the one helping out, putting audio up to the website, bringing into a more social and engaging presence on the web. So it'll be a good, fun show that we get here. Look for a lot of audio and a lot more pictures as we go along.
Good. And tell us about some of your work history.
Oh, work history. I've been around not too long. I'm a young man at 27, but in that time I've been able to produce broadcasts of the Minnesota Twins and the Minnesota Timberwolves, as well as my all-time favorite and the WNBA 2015 championships, the mini Minnesota Lynx. and your
best team in the WNBA, aren't they?
Hey, best team in the WNBA right there.
They only lost one or two games.
You're good friends with one of our good friends on Sports Talk, Kevin Garnett. You and KG used to run the streets of Minneapolis together.
He only yelled at you how many times?
Oh, just about every night. But
you mess with his music. You mess with his music.
You do not touch KG's music dial in the post-game locker room. He'll get on you for that. Jolliest guy before game, but don't you dare touch that music dial on post-game.
Don't you dare touch that dial. It's great to have you with us. We're looking forward to working with you. And we have a very good change. I'm not going to talk about it yet, but a very good change that the listeners you're going to love coming in August for Sports Talk. We'll tell you more when we get into August. But you're going to like what we're going to. Every year we try to do a little something to improve the show outside of getting rid of the hosts. That will never change. You'll have to live with that. But we are making a major change to the show, formatically speaking, that you're going to like. So that'll be coming up in August. So getting ready for the football season and doing a little tweaking here and there with Sports Talk. I think you'll like it. And it's great having Jared with us here as well. Okay, Fisher DeBerry coming up after the next break. We'll talk with him about the upcoming Coaches for Charity event. That is later on this month in Greenville at the Hyatt Regency. That's a week from Thursday. And, of course, this is an event that raises money for charities for the coaches involved. It also raises money for kids to go to summer football camps, FCA football camps, things of that nature. It's a great event. It's something that I believe is going into its 7th year here in South Carolina. And so we'll chat with the coach coming up in just a little bit and get more information about how all that is coming together. From Clemson, a story here from the Clemson Insider about Tiger baseball. The Clemson Board of Trustees Compensation Committee is going to meet tomorrow, and they will approve a new contract and compensation for Monty Lee plus his assistant coaches, Bradley LeCroy and Andrew C. The trustees will also approve baseball-specific bonuses. According to the Clemson Insider, Lee's new contract will be for 6 years, running through 2022, and the Tiger skipper will be paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000 a year. He's expected to receive an extra $27.5 in bonuses after the Tigers won the ACC championship and won 2 games in the NCAA regional. Let's see here. Lee will pick up another $10,000. Okay, because of the 2 wins in the region, only picked up a bonus for winning in the ACC, winning the ACC championship. So Clemson showing Monty Lee and his staff the love after getting some nice things done this baseball season. It was a great baseball season for Clemson and a very good season for South Carolina, but nobody, of course, touched what Coastal Carolina did. And I believe tomorrow night, haven't heard back from him yet. I've had initial contact with him, but Andrew Beckwith, the star pitcher for Coastal Carolina, hoping to have him on the program with us tomorrow night. How cool would that be?
Yeah, I mean, people are so proud of him. You know, I live in the extreme northeast, a little even further northeast in Euclid near Blythewood, and right next to his hometown. And him and his dad, Bill, have been making the rounds. I don't think they're ever going to have to pay for another meal in that part of the world and in Conway. And I know I was in Gilbert briefly during the 4th of July with some family, and the Peach Festival was going on, and Connor Owens was there at the parade. What a story. I mean, that is just one of the all-time great stories in South Carolina sports history, what Coastal Carolina just did and what he did and how they did it.
No doubt about it. No, I mean, so unexpectedly, and to beat the teams they beat and the way they beat them, and again, just the way that team came together, well chronicled here and other places. And, of course, Gary Gilmore and his coaches, his assistant coaches, of course, they don't get a whole lot of acclaim, but they all did a heck of a job in pulling off that national championship. Still kind of hard to believe, but been coming for a while. They just needed to have the right guys come together and the right situations fall in place for them, and they got it done. And I don't think – I mean, will they be back in Omaha next year? You know, teams tend to go to Omaha in streaks. Now, can they go back next year? That they will have Beckwith back to be the strength of their pitching staff, and they've got the young freshman who came on as a starter year. He'll be back. They'll have that's at least 2 really good starters. They've got Bobby Holmes back to be their closer. So.
They go up to the Sun Belt next year, so it's going to be a little a tougher road in conference just to get in. Not that they can't do it. Look, they won the national championship this year, so I'm not saying the Sun Belt's going to trip them up.
And they'll have the kind of the proverbial target.
Oh yeah, they're not going to sneak up on anybody. But Coastal didn't sneak up on anybody before. They've been getting it done down there for a while in Conway. They just busted through.
All right, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Let's welcome in one of our legendary coaches in South Carolina, Fisher DeBerry. Coach, how you doing?
Good morning. Good afternoon. How are you guys?
Hey, it's great to have you with us. Hope everything's going well.
Well, we're honored to be. We really are. Yeah, everything's well. I'm sure that it's hot in Columbia because it's always 10 degrees hotter than it is down here in Charleston, and it's been hot down here today, man.
Ain't no doubt. Okay, we got another Coaches for Charity event coming up, this time in Greenville in a couple of weeks. Tell us about how it's all coming together for you.
Well, 2 weeks from last night, and we're really, really excited. And we're going to Greenville for the first time. As you know, we've held it in Columbia for the last 5 or 6 years. And that's no disrespect to Columbia, but we just thought it was fair to the upper state coaches to carry it up there so they wouldn't have to travel this far. And, of course, Dabo's promised us we'll have 100 more people in Greenville than we had in Columbia, but we'll see. And but we're looking forward to it. And the coaches are really excited about it. And for them to be willing to give a night toward charity and helping others that's close to football season, I just think is just so honorable on their part.
Yeah. Now, you know, one of the things that's made it a lot of fun over the years was Sweeney and Spurrier and their relationship and the way that they played off each other and seemed to have a really good time. Do you think Muschamp will sort of pick up the same attitude and have the same kind of rapport with Dabo and sort of go back and forth with him? Is that what you're kind of hoping?
Well, I'll tell you, there'll be a lot of energy in that room. We know Phil's got a lot of energy, and, of course, Dabo brings a lot of flair. And then, of course, Mike Ayers and Buddy Pugh, I guarantee you he'll add a lot of and, of course, Willie Jeffers will be there. And you never know what kind of jokes he's going to have for the group. But, you know, I really enjoy the panel discussion, hearing the guys talk about, you know, why they're doing what they're doing and what's going on in their lives. And, you know, we're getting away a little bit from football, but yet football is the thing that brings us all there together, and, of course, raising funds for the charity of their choice. But we're really excited because we've been able to reach more kids this year through our foundation than ever before. It looks like we'll send over 700 kids this year to camps all across the country, and it's important that we have a good night financially, and so we're expecting a big turnout, maybe the biggest one we've ever had, and we really had a great turnout at the stadium in Denver in May, back on May the 11th, and we really had a good night out there.
Yeah. How many different states are you now in doing this?
Well, we're doing 3. We're doing Colorado in May, and then we did one up at Chapel Hill at UNC with Larry Fedora, honoring him and the season that he had. Of course, you know, Larry was on my staff, and Larry was selected by the American Football Coaches Association as the National FCA Coach of the Year. So we were up there to help them raise funds for the charity of his choice, and then also for his chaplain and for his program with FCA there on the campus of North Carolina, and then the one here in South Carolina. And the one in South Carolina usually is the largest attended one, but we really had a great turnout out in Colorado. So we're excited to see if this one's going to be a lot bigger.
Okay, now it begins at 6 o'clock with a reception. 7 to 9 is a dinner program, coaches panel, live auction. What can the folks expect to do in terms of having a chance to talk with the coaches, rub elbows with them, and just sort of mingle?
Well, all the coaches, you know, will get in. Of course, I hope that you can make it, and we'll, you know, I'm sure you visit with some coaches, but that's a great time for coaches to visit with the media, but also with the fans. And, of course, most of them get there, you know, just a little after 6 o'clock, and they're so good about taking time to visit with the fans. And, of course, that's a great opportunity for them, and I think that's why we have as good a turnout as we do. But you know, then once the program starts, we go pretty fast, and, you know, we realize and are respectful of people's time and the commitment the coaches have made to being there, and the fact that they've got a lot coming up the next day and the next few days. And so we try to move things along real fast. But most importantly, it's a spirited group, and we'll hear from a kid or two that has been to FCA camp and what the camp has meant to their lives, and how their hearts have been changed, and how their schools have been impacted by kids going to camp, and what they plan to do when they get back. So it's just a very uplifting, evening altogether. I just enjoy it more than anybody.
Yeah, I can tell. I know you throw your heart and soul into it. Tickets can be purchased online, SouthCarolinaCoaches.com. So check that out. We always thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you.
Well, I'm going to appreciate y'all's support. It's always great to know really appreciate all the business.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Boy, I hope Coach didn't fall into the water. He sounded like he was underwater
Under the
there at
sea.
the very end. Somebody throw him a rope. Fisher DeBerry with us here on Sports Talk. Back in a moment. All right, thanks again to Coach DeBerry for being with us. Remember, that event's coming up in 13 days. It was 2 weeks from yesterday up at the Hyatt in Greenville. Always a lot of fun. If you haven't got your tickets yet, go online and get them taken care of. Make your plans to be there. You will not be disappointed. They have a great silent auction, some terrific stuff they always have for auction. Plus, of course, you have the access to the coaches, so you can have a good time with them. All right, so tomorrow, finally, we get South Carolina here in Hoover. Gamecocks, one of three teams coming through, just one wave. South Carolina, Ole Miss, and LSU. It will be Will Muschamp first in the big room. Now, as I mentioned earlier, first things first, he's going to meet with South Media upstairs in a little holding room they have for the coaches where they can put their suits on and makeup and everything else and get ready for the television cameras and all that. And he's going to meet with us, as Spurrier always did, for about, 7, 8, 10 minutes. And then he'll go downstairs and start making the rounds. So we'll have a couple of different pieces of audio with him, plus the interviews with the players, Deebo Samuel, Marquavius Lewis, and Mason Zandy. I don't know. I know, unless he's changed a little bit since football season in the spring. I know Quay is a terrific kid, but he doesn't say a whole lot. We'll see how talkative he is in these various. I tell you, if you're shy and you don't like to talk to the media or people in general, this is not a good place to be, because they bring you here to be interviewed and you're asked the same questions practically at every stop. I mean, here's the rounds that you have to go through. Coach and player. I'll use Lewis's schedule as an example. You go to TV first, Then you go to the radio internet room, which is a group of people who are in that room for radio or internet. Then you go to the main room, which they have 3 different interview stations set up in the main room. Each player from a team is set up at a different corner, and the media horde goes from one to the other. Then you go to SEC Video. Then you go to CBS Sports 1. Then you go to ESPN. Then CBS Sports 2. Then SEC Radio. Then Sirius XM. Then Network Web. And then the SEC Network. And then you're done.
That's all?
That's it.
Well, just
I'm talked out just listening to that list.
Well, always just, make sure you say the same thing at all venues and you're fine.
Yeah. You got to be just mentally wrung out by the time you get to the end, because you have heard the same questions pretty much over and over. The coaches can handle it because, of course, they're used to it. But and some players, I mean, look, Clowney had a blast at it when he was here. He stirred the place up, turned it on its head. But I know for some of them it is a struggle because they just don't deal well with questions and answers. Not saying that Quay won't do well tomorrow. I'm just saying he's typically a quiet guy. I'm a little surprised they're bringing him, but that who is coming along with Zandy and Samuel. All right, guys, have a great night. Thank you, Carson. Thank you, Jared. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow night here on Sports Talk.